running a little late. Apologies. I got a 14-minute drive, and then I'll be where I gotta be. Acting 101. This is particularly for people that are new or have some foundational concept. But I guess kind of my disclaimer is, I always was this way with acting coaches. It's like, why would I trust you? You don't have a career. So I don't want to be a hypocrite. But for every hardworking, talented, skilled, trained actor out there, there are thousands of them, and I say us, to every one known, successful, famous actor. So I guess I say that to try to not be too much of a hypocrite. Because yeah, why trust me? Here I am on YouTube with no career. But anyway, I think I have stuff to offer. So Acting 101. I'm running into this with some new actors. I'm directing in a thing. It's the play True West. It's an amazing play. Amazing play. I would kill to do it someday as an actor or director. One thing I'm running into for new people, like I said, I can't cover it in 12 minutes, but I want to kind of cover the basics. The big thing I would say is inhibitions, and that's easier said than done, but acting is releasing inhibitions. So yeah, if I'm playing a Green Beret, I can phone that shit in. If I'm playing blue collar, stoic, angry, jaded old man, Western cowboy, cattle driver, Idahoan, yeah, I can phone that in. No inhibition breaking required. But if I'm playing a character that's a little away from who I as Jeff am, that requires a little bit of inhibition breaking, because that's where you're not playing yourself. I mean, those are the roles I dare say a lot of actors actually want. Those are the ones they got to work for and find the character and all that artsy fartsy bullshit. And sometimes you'll hear me mocking the artsy fartsy bullshit. I value the artsy fartsy hippity hoppity acty bullshit, but I still stand and I get in the moment and I get into character and all this eye rolling bullshit. But let's not blow it out of proportion. We're not curing cancer. Children pretend with Oscar level belief and Academy award level winning performances. We as adults complicate this shit. That's my theory. Don't get so hoity-toity. You're playing pretend. Playing pretend well, I agree, takes some talent, skill, and focus, but take it down a notch. You're not curing all the world's problems. So anyway, I think a big part of it, and I'm running into it with some of my actors, is inhibitions, especially when you are cast in a role that's not you. And I think this is easier said than done now, where it's kind of a liberating place to be in my life and career. Excuse the language, but my give a fuck is in the toilet, which is liberating, because it's I don't give a shit, do this, But when you first start acting, no matter what age, particularly when you're in a more young, self-conscious age, and you kind of are worried what everybody thinks of you, or you're slightly maybe older and you're I'm too cool for school, all those scenarios, you're going to be a little less willing to swing for the fences. And then, some people aren't that way ever, which is fine and great. But some people, myself included, do have those obstacles to overcome. And I think so inhibitions would be one big thing, is overcoming them. And an exercise I do, and I can only sum this up in so much time, but an exercise I do, and I've stolen this from somebody, I don't know who, or I've stolen it from a handful of things, but I remember specifically stealing this from a line memorization exercise, but I turned it into an acting exercise where I have myself, but I'll have the actors, or I'll do it myself, perform the scenes or the role with the lines as written to a Jim Carrey level, insane, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura 15, on a scale of 10. Just perform it absurd. obviously try to stay true to the character, but when you're going to that level, it's just sheer nonsense. But it's big, it's loud, the choices are over the top, it's melodramatic. You're going to be winded, you're going to be sweaty. But the point is it breaks you of that. And in an interesting world now, you can actually record that performance. And this is what I did in my exercise for these actors for True West, is when you record that performance, you realize you're like, oh, I wasn't really going over the top much at all. And it actually gives you, it calibrates your inhibition perspective. That's a phrase I'm going to try to remember. You know, I literally, oh, I hate that. I had the actors watch their takes, their videos, and they said, oh, I felt like I was going way bigger. I was like, no, that's my point. So what your way bigger, which you thought was a 15, was actually a scene performance appropriate, 4 or 5 or whatever. And that comes from inhibitions, skill, experience, etc. But I think a big part of it is inhibition, is swinging for the fences. So I'd say acting 101 is find a way to get over your inhibitions. That's a huge obstacle. And one of the things I would say in the short amount of time I have, I wanted to have this all nice and outlined, is also you're going to hear all sorts of method, and this is coming from somebody that's like, I spent 4+ years in method acting, like a method acting conservatory, learning like Strasberg, Stanislavski level method acting. And some method acting is batshit crazy, and I don't use that. I look at like acting like religion in an ideal way. Take what makes you better, and the other stuff that detracts or doesn't make you better, get rid of. So some aspects of method acting, most of them work for me. Other parts, I'm like, that's too much. But at the end of the day, you're just filling your toolbox. And so if you come across a director that's all, obviously I'm pulling from my own life, all like, tell me what your character's colors are and all this, that doesn't work for me. I'm like, I, as a human, don't think that way. Why all of a sudden am I going to make this character, albeit fictional, they're not self-aware. I don't wake up in the morning and go, Jeff, what color do you feel today? No. So I would say you're going to hear as a newbie, techniques. You're going to hear, whether you hear literal techniques of Meisner, Stanislavski, Uta Hagen. Cool, great. Learn them. It's better to learn something that you didn't like or doesn't work for you than to not have learned it, tried it. It's like process of elimination learning. But then put all that in your toolbox and then use it as necessary. I do not need a acting special style to play a Green Beret. But I always use this example, and I know it's extreme, but I apologize. If I get cast as a pedophile, I'm going to have to definitely tap into something different. And that's not to say what does it take for me to be a pedophile? Like, that's weird. That's fucking bullshit. Like, don't be creepy. But you can do research and realize, at the core, I'm just pulling the psychology out of my butt. Maybe there's a control issue, or people that like to be in a dominating state. All right, that I can relate to. I like being in charge. I like dominating in like athletics. Okay, now extrapolate that times 10 in this to the scene or the character, and then that's called actor homework. That's then pulling from what you can bring, the tools in your toolbox, to a character. Sometimes you have to pull up more tools and more I don't want to say gimmicks, but just more equipment out for various characters and roles and situations. And sometimes you don't have to pull out as many. Sometimes you can just phone it in and be just as good. I don't know who said it. It's been bastardized and quoted multiple times, but it's your character. It's an imagined character. It's a character living in a. What would you do as this character living in a? How's it go? An imagined character in realistic circumstances. Whatever. God, it's a good quote, and I just ruined it. So yeah, I would say inhibitions, and don't overthink it. Use what works for you. Especially in the new acting world, people are going to get, like, they mean well. I've yet to run into anybody that's my negative experiences that I reflect on that meant anything that came from a place of malice, but it still was annoying as hell, you know, to be all like, where does your character move from, or what color does his emotion have? I'm like, I don't know. Like, that doesn't work for me. Teach their own. I argue Daniel Day-Lewis is one of the best actors on the planet. So is Jake Gyllenhaal. I think the outcomes are the same. Do you have to be some weird stereotypical method actor asshole like Daniel Day-Lewis on set? I argue no. I argue he is a good enough actor. He is talented and skilled enough that he doesn't have to do all that weird stay in character bullshit. That's not playing pretend. Because let's look at Robin Williams. If you look at him when he was in the movie 1 Hour Photo, or I think it's called Insomnia, where he plays a serial killer in Alaska, something like that, or 1 Hour Photo, and another one, I'm just blanking on it. In between takes, he was his usual coked out funny Robin Williams, and the minute they got ready to call action, he dropped into that creepy character as believably as any Daniel Day-Lewis performance I've ever seen. Did he take his character home and stay in character? No, he played pretend. Like, and I quote an instructor I had at Strasberg Method Acting Conservatory in Los Angeles and New York. If this stuff is lingering, because that's a big stereotype with method acting. They don't teach that shit. They do not teach stay in character and go home and stay in the zone. Like, that's bullshit. Method acting does not teach that. Anybody that does that has not been formally trained. But one of my instructors is like, if this is lingering and making you ick, you need therapy. You have issues. So if anybody's saying anything. So yeah, inhibitions. If you're a new actor, record yourself, do your scenes, try that Jim Carrey exercise I'm talking about, and you'll truly see your perspective shift. You'll recalibrate what you think is a crazy 11 or 15. I call it the Jim Carrey 15. Go to a 15. Just go extreme hard Jim Carrey. Record it, and you'll be like, some things you'll be like, okay, that's just goofy. That made no sense. Other times you'll be like, oh, that actually is appropriate. Especially when you get tired, you'll start to drag it out. People aren't laughing at your stuff. It's a very forced exercise, you know. So you'll kind of, your energy will wane, and you'll realize like, oh, that actually works. And then also acting styles or techniques or whatever works for you. Don't forget Robin Williams, Gyllenhaal. He plays some amazing roles. You know, when you're playing pretend, don't get me wrong, I played some heinous characters. And yeah, you kind of get in the zone, you kind of are in a weird little funk, but that shit doesn't need to go home with you. So look at the Jake Gyllenhaals, look at the Robin Williams. It's possible to just play pretend. When they call cut, go home. Like, you know, do you have to be an asshole like Daniel Day-Lewis or Jared Leto? No. So do what works for you. And this is, again, acting 101, and it's kind of crammed, but you need to, as humans, as you and I, we're driven by wants and needs in our daily life as humans, not actors. And we don't really think about it. You're like, you know, we do a little bit. It's like, wow, I'm hungry, I want breakfast, or wow, I'm hungry, I need food. But we don't really articulate needs per se. So that's part of the actor's homework, is actually evaluating what does my character need or want, because that helps you create a scene as far as, just a sec. Sorry, everyone, 2 seconds. And I bought a Monster and didn't even touch it. But yeah, that helps you articulate what your character wants or needs in the scene, or in the movie, or the script, or the play, or the TV show, because that's what matters. Because as a new actor, if you don't realize, if you play it like we do in our normal day, our normal days are pretty boring and mundane. So you have to find the extremes, I argue, because you're making, if you make a play or write a play or do a show that represents daily boring life, well, what's the point? Isn't the point of art to entertain and make you think? If I had somebody record my daily life, I wouldn't be entertained, and I definitely wouldn't be thinking very deeply. So the goal as a creator is to entertain. So don't just make shit up for the sake of making shit up, but don't forget you are doing something to entertain an audience. If you are making art just to watch yourself on video and to watch it in a vacuum and for nobody else, you're kind of a narcissistic asshole. But I would assume if you're in the acting sphere, you're creating something for an audience. So you need to make them want to watch it. So those wants and needs that we have daily, if you made a movie or a play about somebody that wants breakfast, that would be boring. Like, it might have a funny nuance, but ultimately nobody wants to see that. So you got to think of what they want and make it have some weight to it. Yeah, there's a lot of depth to it, but I think in summary, break your inhibitions, record yourself, realize what is truly going big, and don't be scared, because fuck it, who cares what people think? And that's coming from somebody who's very self-like conscious. And also study and learn all the quote unquote techniques, but don't get so far up the ass of said techniques that you forget that this is just playing pretend. This isn't, that's all it is. Little kids do this and they believe it to the depth of their core that what they're doing is real. They don't think twice about it. And if you were to watch them as an audience, you will just be enamored. So take those little things, because as humans, to play pretend, especially as adults, when we lose that childlike wonder, we're going to need those tools or those tips or those tricks or those things you learn in various schools and acting styles. You're going to need them for sure, to develop, compelling characters and all that artsy-fartsy bullshit. But don't get so wound up in the details that you then just forget it's playing pretend. Just you're as fantastical the characters are, everybody has a common thread, no matter how bad the character is and no matter how heinous or boring or whatever. We all have common threads, because unless you're playing a robot or unless you're playing a tree, we can relate to other humans. You just got to find that connection. But yeah, Nicolas Cage, good example. That guy swings for the fences. And that's a liberating place to be in a career. But I got to go. Speaking of acting, I'm designing a set piece for this play. I got to get in and get drafting on this blueprint. So hopefully some people enjoyed that. It was kind of off the cuff. Everybody take care, have a great day, and all of that stuff. Adios. Oh, I will also say, comment below thoughts, questions, curiosities, and I will do more of these in the future for sure. But yeah, comment below, ask questions, subscribe, please, and we will work to make this thing awesome.